In this video, you're going to get a masterclass in diplomatic explanations in a way that you can school somebody and dominate a conversation without raising your voice and without saying anything smart or antagonistic to the other person. You see, in this interview, Margaret Brennan, she does everything she can to try to paint a negative picture, to try to fearmonger, and to try to get a gotcha moment that the left-wing media can run with, spewing all types of negative headlines about Secretary of State Rubio and President Trump's direction that they take in the country as far as when it comes to foreign policy. And also, and it's just me, it almost seems as if the left-wing extreme media uses these interviews as a way to telegraph our plays to our adversaries in the world. They try to get them to admit or claim certain things publicly that we plan on doing privately, as if that would be an effective way to handle it. So we're going to get into this, and let's watch Marco Rubio school this woman. And at points, I might jump in with a little bit of commentary, but I really want to get your feedback on it. So let's go ahead and get off into it. Check this out.
Mr. Secretary, for our audience, just to explain, this Red Sea area is a really important transit point for global shipping. The Houthis out of Yemen have been disrupting transit there for some time. President Trump cited these concerns when he announced the strikes. I'm wondering, how long will this campaign last, and will it involve ground forces?
Well, first of all, the problem here is that this is a very important shipping lane. And in the last year and a half, the last 18 months, the Houthis have struck or attacked 174 naval vessels of the United States, attacking the U.S. Navy directly 174 times. And 145 times they've attacked commercial shipping. So we basically have a band of pirates, you know, with guided precision anti-ship weaponry, and exacting a toll system in one of the most important shipping lanes in the world. That's just not sustainable. We are not going to have these people controlling which ships can go through and which ones cannot. And so your question is, how long will this go on? It will go on until they no longer have the capability to do that.
Okay, now, real quick, you may already know this, but who are the Houthis? Okay, and I'll show real quick who the Houthis are. The Houthis are an Iranian-backed rebel group, okay? They're an Iranian-backed, if you can see right here, I'm not sure. The Houthis are an Iranian-backed rebel group which considers Israel an enemy. They also have a war that's going on with Saudi Arabia and a coalition that Saudi Arabia has. The Houthis were involved in a coup that actually flipped the government on its head. And since that time, they've been just running amok. And apparently the former president of the country had a bad relationship with them. And the new president has a better relationship with them. But at the same time, they are enemies of America, enemies of Israel. And did you hear what Secretary of State Rubio said? They attacked American ships 174 times. It almost seems like President Biden and Kamala Harris was more supportive of the Houthi regime than they were of Israel. They helped Iran get rich. Iran generated billions of dollars during Joe Biden's administration. One was the trade for the hostages, where Joe Biden's administration paid them $6 billion for 6 hostages back. That's how weak that they saw that he was. They threw a ransom out there, he paid. Remember the exchange with Russia. They got Dr. Death, who was one of the most lethal attackers in the world, in exchange for Brittany Griner, the gay, should I say, the lesbian WNBA player who was a drug smuggler. Crazy. But that's who the Houthis are. So when you hear them keep talking about the Houthis, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page.
Yeah.
We're doing the entire world a favor by getting rid of these guys and their ability to strike global shipping. That's the mission here, and it will continue until that's carried out. That never happened before. The Biden administration didn't do that. All the Biden administration would do is they would respond to an attack. These guys would launch one rocket, we'd hit the rocket launcher. That's it. This is an effort to take away their ability to control global shipping in that part of the world. That's just not going to happen anymore.
And it could
this will continue until that's finished.
It could involve ground raids?
Well, those are military decisions to be made, but I've heard no talk of ground raids. I don't think there's a necessity for it right now. I can tell you that as of last night, some of the key people involved in those missile launches are no longer with us. And I can tell you that some of the facilities that they used are no longer existing. And that will continue. Look, it's bottom line, easy way to understand it, okay? These guys are able to control what ships can go through there. They've attacked the U.S. Navy 174 times. Yeah. They've attacked the United States Navy. We're not going to have people sitting around with the missiles attacking the U.S. Navy. It's not going to happen, not under President Trump.
Now, you heard what she spoke about when she asked about ground troops. The only reason why she's even asking that question is because they want to get Secretary of State Rubio to say out loud that, yeah, we're committing troops to the ground, so they can run with that and talk about how Trump is getting us into war. These people are so disingenuous. Even the smile that she makes with it, and then goes back to, she's waiting on a gotcha moment. Now, in this next clip, she's going to start talking about tariffs with China. And I want you to pay attention to who it is that she's more focused on fighting for, going back and forth with Secretary of State Rubio. And in the comments, I'd like for you to tell me what you believe when you hear this exchange. Do you believe that she's genuinely asking that question because she's concerned about tariffs? Or do you believe that she's bringing up this point, trying to make it sound negative and fear-monger so that, you know, the Trump administration won't apply the tariffs and we can continue onward, letting other countries do to us what they have been doing? Check out this exchange, and I want to get your feedback on, do you feel like she's sincerely looking out for America's best interest or the interests of other countries? Check this exchange out.
To ask you about tariffs, because you were just in Canada this past week. China is Canada's second biggest export market, Mexico's third. In this ongoing trade back and forth the U.S. is having, isn't there a risk that China will ultimately be the winner? If it's too costly to deal with the United States, won't they benefit?
Well, actually, China and Canada are involved in a mini trade war right now. In fact, the Chinese have imposed a bunch of tariffs, reciprocal or retaliatory tariffs on Canada after Canada imposed tariffs on them.
If you enjoyed this video, do me a solid. Hit that like button. I'll never ask you for a cash app. I'll never ask you for a super chat. But you hitting that like button, that is currency because it helps spread the video around. And if you haven't already subscribed, subscribe to the channel on the Real Politics Podcast. That's what we do. We talk real politics. So once you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and make sure you select all. That way, you'll be notified when I upload new videos. See, now the media doesn't want to talk about that. They go crazy over Trump about tariffs, but China's tariffing Canada. Canada is tariffing China. It's called negotiations. But yet our media, our left-wing extremist libtards that are on these networks, they got the general public terrified about tariffs as if it's a negative thing, when in reality, up until 1913, that's how business was done. There was no national income tax. And so tariffs are a positive thing, but look at how she frames the question.
So here's the way everyone needs to understand this, okay? The president rightfully believes that the balance of global trade is completely off kilter. For 30 or 40 years, we have allowed countries to treat us unfairly in global trade, much of it during the Cold War because we wanted them to be rich and prosperous because they were our allies in the Cold War. But now that has to change. You look at the European Union. The European Union's economy is about the same size as ours. It's not a low-wage economy. It's very comparable to ours in terms of its composition and so forth. Why do they have a trade surplus with us? So what the president is saying is two things. Number one, there are critical industries like aluminum, like steel, like semiconductors, like automobile manufacturing that he rightfully believes, President Trump rightfully believes the U.S. needs to have a domestic capability. And the way you protect those industries and build that capability is by ensuring that there's economic incentives to produce in the United States. The second is global. And that is, we are going to put tariffs on countries reciprocal to what they impose on us. And so this is a global. It's not against Canada. It's not against Mexico. It's not against the EU. It's everybody. And then from that new baseline of fairness and reciprocity, we will engage potentially in bilateral negotiations with countries around the world on new trade arrangements that make sense for both sides. Fairness. But right now, it's not fair. We're going to reset the baseline, and then we can enter into these bilateral agreements, potentially, with countries so that our trade is fair. What's not going to continue is, of course, these countries.
So this is all just about leverage to get bilateral, not North American free trade deals, renegotiation?
No, it's not leverage. It's fairness. It's resetting baseline fairness. And then from there, we can work on deals and so forth, because they'll have products we don't make. We have products they don't make. That's where trade works the best. It has to be free, but it has to be fair. And right now, it's only free on one side, and it's not fair for the other side.
And see, that's another point, great point that Secretary of State Rubio brings up. The media does not tell the people that we're getting tariffed, but yet we're not tariffing them. And they keep, and a lot of times that's these other countries that start these propaganda movements and put money and organizers in the street to make people start, you know, saying this stuff out loud. Oh, the tariffs are going to do this. The tariffs are going to do that. We saw when Canada tried to threaten with the electricity, or should I say the energy. They did that only because they thought the American population in those states, in Michigan, in Minnesota, in New York, those border states that got their energy from that Canadian company, which is insane anyway, to have American citizens getting their energy from a Canadian company, which is nuts. But when they made that threat, they did that to freak out the 1.5 million people that were getting that electricity, where they would create such an uproar that the administration would back down. But that just plays to the ignorance, and ignorance just meaning lack of knowledge, lack of information. that the general public has, and that's because of the media. They keep them deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to tariffs, fearmonger like they're a bad thing. Why? Because these lobbyists and these corporations are paying the media to say that, because they have a lot of these corporations, board members and high ups and CEOs move to these other countries or live in these other countries or have backdoor deals. The politicians have backdoor deals with these lobbyists from these other countries. Say, hey, listen, put this trade deal, make this sweet for us, yada, yada. We'll make sure 250,000 keep going to your campaign. We'll make sure your grandson gets that admission into Georgetown. We'll make sure that your great-grandchildren's college funds are paid for. Things that are really hard to track, but it's being done every single day. How else do we end up with such lopsided trade deficits? I'm talking about billions of dollars in deficit. And what that trade deficit means, it means that they make a lot of money off of us. We don't make money off of them. So there's a deficit there. However much more money than us they make on our so-called exchange, our trade exchange, creates the deficit. So it's not like anybody owes anybody any money. It's just the difference between how the two countries benefit off the trade with one another. And we get destroyed. And Bill Clinton putting us in that NAFTA deal, which was horrible, which President Trump pulled us out of. The Paris Accords, the Green New Scam, pulled us out of it. And so great explanation, Secretary of State Rubio.
Well,
It's an
sir,
unsustainable position.
The ad hoc nature of these policy announcements and pullbacks are causing concern in the marketplace, as we saw this past week. So I heard you describe what seemed like a strategy to get to negotiations on a bilateral front. You also seem to negotiate, you say this was national security minded, but then we also see comments by the president of like 200% tariffs on champagne. That's not a critical industry for the United States. That seems more emotional.
No, that's called retaliation. That's what happens in these trade exchanges. They're going to increase tariffs on. They already have high tariffs. They're going to add more to their tariffs. Fine. Then we'll have to find something to. You tell me. Canada's going after whiskey and orange juice and
retaliation.
Yeah, exactly. So that sounds pretty petty to me as well. So what's the difference? The point is, I get it. I understand why these countries don't like it, because the status quo of trade is good for them. It benefits them. They like the status quo. We don't like the status quo. We are going to set a new status quo, and then we can negotiate something, if they want to, that is fair for both sides. But what we have now cannot continue. We have just deindustrialized this country. Okay, deindustrialized the United States of America. There are things we can no longer make, and we have to be able to make in order to be safe as a country and in order to have jobs. That's why we had a Rust Belt. That's why we've suffered all these important jobs that once sustained entire communities, wiped out by trade, that basically sent these factories, these jobs, this industrial capability to other places. That cannot and will not continue. President Trump, this is no mystery. He's been talking about this since the 1980s, actually, even before he was a political figure. This is going to happen, and it's going to happen now.
Now, she brought up how Wall Street was freaking out. Yeah, Wall Street freaked out because the media put out some of the worst headlines and some of the worst storylines that the people around the world saw, and it made them freak out. It is crazy to me that the left-wing extremist libtard media and our Democrat politicians are trying to sink America. They're trying to tank this country. As a matter of fact, check out this next question, where she's going to bring up the deportation of the person, the Muhammad Khalil, who was creating all the uproar at the universities, at Harvard, at Columbia, and all the anti-Semitism. Check out how she brings up in words this, and how Rubio just crushes her. Check this out.
I want to ask you about a decision you made to revoke a student visa for someone at Columbia University this past week. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes, the administration needs to be careful. It's targeting real promoters of terrorism, not breaking the great promise of a green card by deporting anyone with controversial political views. Can you substantiate any form of material support for terrorism, specifically to Hamas, from this Columbia student? Or was it simply that he was espousing a controversial political point of view?
Before he and I apologize for stopping it, he's going to get into that, but listen to how she frames the question from a sympathetic way for this person. It's crazy to me how when there's violence and extremism and it's somebody that's doing it to benefit the left, they always downplay as it's just them exercising their right. It's okay that they burn flags. It's okay that they burn up cars. It's okay. They're just exercising their right. But on January the 6th, the worst quote unquote coup, like they try to call it, in history, where nobody died. Well, Ashley Babbitt was killed, so somebody did pass away, but she was killed by the Capitol Police. But there was no police that died that day. No buildings were burned down to the ground. None of that at all. But yet they consider that as bad as 9/11. But when it comes to this person who was here spewing anti-Semitic rhetoric, shutting down colleges, terrorizing other children, she's got this sympathetic tone. These people are treasonous.
Well, not just the student. We're going to do more. In fact, every day now we're approving visa revocations. And if that visa led to a green card, the green card process as well. And here's why. It's very simple. When you apply to enter the United States and you get a visa, you are a guest. And you're coming as a student, you're coming as a tourist or what have you. And in it, you have to make certain assertions. And if you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events, that runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America. It's that simple. So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa. Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
But is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, they take over. I mean, you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings.
They
vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down
I'm
colleges.
asking about the specific justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other. We don't want it. We don't need these people in our country. We never should have allowed them in the first place. If he had told us, I'm going over there and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down, people can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized, we never would have let him in. We never would have let him in to begin with. And now that he's doing it and he's here, he's going to leave, and so are others, and we're going to keep doing it. And by the way, I find it ironic that a lot of these people out there defending the First Amendment speech, alleged free speech rights of these Hamas sympathizers, they had no problem, pressuring social media to censor American political speech. So I think it's ironic and hypocritical. But the bottom line is this: if you are in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, to participate in vandalism, to participate in acts of rebellion and riots on campus, we never would have let you in if we had known that. And now that we know it,
only pro-Palestinian people who are going to have their visas revoked, or are other points of view as well?
No, I think anybody who's here in favor. Look, we want to get rid of Tren de Agua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did, as a terrorist organization. We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand. We don't want people in our country that are going to be committing crimes and undermining our national security or the public safety. It's that simple. Especially people that are here as guests. That is what a visa is. I don't know where we've gotten it in our head that a visa is some sort of birthright. It is not. It is a visitor into our country. And if you violate the terms of your visitation, you are going to leave.
Okay.
Now, she wants all of this evidence about what he's connected to and all of this stuff. But where was all this vetting when he came into the country? And you notice how she wanted to. So it's just because Palestine. It's as if these people, they back these extremist terrorists. It's almost like this whole thing is flipped, wearing Ukraine flags on the congressional floor. Now she wants all of this evidence of him being directly tied to a terrorist organization, as if they hand out membership cards or they get it tattooed on their chest that say, part of this group and this is what I am. And they want all of this detail now. Where was that outrage when people were coming in? Where was that outrage when Laken Riley was killed? Where was that outrage on the attempt on President Trump's life? Nobody cares about the specifics and the information and getting all the details. She didn't ask that about the person that took that shot at the president in Butler. She didn't ask all of those questions about the person who assaulted Laken Riley. But they want all of these details about this extremist, anti-Semitic person who had been graduated from the college, who is a grown man there amongst children, manipulating these children's minds, terrorizing other children on campus, destroying historic colleges and universities. And these left-wing extreme libtards, all they care is about protecting the criminal. All they care is about putting other countries first. Well, this is the America First golden age now. And people like Margaret Brennan make me so upset, and she needs to be yanked off TV. And every time Marco Rubio sits down and speaks with her, he destroys this lady, and he did another masterful job again. So good job and kudos, Secretary. But I just wanted to jump on and show you what type of treasonous, extremist, left-wing libtards we have on our networks. And I know you know, but I got to keep bringing it. And people say, Brian, how do you stomach looking at this stuff? My obligation is to help other MAGA members, other members of the Republican Party know what we up against. How can you defeat your opponent when you don't know where they're coming from and what their strengths are? And the Democrat Party, that's where they screw up. They stay in their blue echo chamber amongst each other, reinforcing each other how great it is, not even hearing or acknowledging the other voices, the other opinions, the other perspectives. So when they come out to do battle, they get destroyed because they didn't understand who we are, who MAGA is. This ain't the Republican Party of old. This is the America First Republican Party, the MAGA Republican Party. Same thing. So I do listen to it, and trust me, it's like some days it's like, ah! But I want to bring it so you know what's going on and stay up to speed, because there's a lot of people that aren't as sharp as you are. And they're just waking up. They find videos like this, and it just piques their interest enough to start scratching a little bit. And you know, with the Democrats, all you got to do is scratch a little bit, and boy, you're going to find out that hole is a bottomless pit, and their whole party is a facade. But hey, if you hung in there and you watched it up to this point, I greatly appreciate you, and I thank you. And like always, if you haven't liked this video, share this video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Other than that, I'm Brian Maxwell, and you already know I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.